I observed in past presentation talking about the human factor area concerning two main areas of interest. I mean, air crew members, space crew members maybe in this case, and passengers. Well, there is a different approach between the two, and we will try also to analyze this aspect. We do not know much about hypersonic flight. Why this? Because it was not experienced very much. Here are some examples. The X-15, many even important people have been talking about this experience, which was located mainly in the 60s in the past century. Here are some photos from the Virgin Galactic experience. I would add some aspects related to the re-entry flights of the space shuttle. Nevertheless, we are talking about a few tens of individuals. That means that we do not have very many data concerning the human behavior in these situations. So we can imagine them taking into account our past experience and mainly space flights in a normal aviation environments. Well, if we take just a normal textbook on aerospace medicine, well, these are the main chapters that we can observe in it. And of course, these are all involved in theoretical problems we may face during hypersonic flight. Nevertheless, today we'll try to focus a little bit more our attention on some particular areas of interest, as the decompression sickness one, the special disorientation, radiation, and the acceleration load that can be met by people that are part of the crew inside a vehicle like this. Well, we can start from this. I suppose you are familiar with this sort of images, and we will be talking about an area which is included between the so-called Kármán's line and the so-called Armstrong's line. This is quite interesting from the physiological point of view, because from this level on we have a problem like this. I do not know if you are familiar with this sort of problems that are part of the medical area in aviation medicine. People is related to this, and this is why we have to pay quite a lot of attention to all the problems related to the pressurization of the cockpit, like this. Because a loss of pressurization would mean an ambient pressure which is higher with respect to 73,000 feet. And at that level, the temperature at which water boils is about 37 degrees. That means that our fluids inside our body are starting boiling, and this is not a very nice situation to be met, as you understand. Well, it is not systematically fatal, because in the past, during some experiments conducted in hyperbaric chamber settings, we had some cases where there was a sudden loss of the space suit, which was worn by people undergoing the test. And in that case, although the altitude was higher than this, they survived like this, because the duration of exposure was very short. So this is not so dramatic as we might think about. Nevertheless, well, we have to take this into account, because we have to adopt countermeasures in this case. This is what we do. I don't know if there is a way to make the video start. No. Is it possible to start the video from the computer? No, okay. Okay. Well, this is what happens in case of rapid decompression. This is a video which was taken from our laboratories, and you see the trainees are performing some maneuvers that whose main aim is to provide immediately oxygen supply, and at the same time to reduce their possibility to be affected by problems related, in this case, to the compression thickness. And thank you very much. If we go back to the presentation. Thank you. So there is a partial solution, of course. It depends on how long we are exposed to this environmental situation, but we can train crew members to utilize countermeasures in these cases. Another problem is the one related to spatial disorientation in flight. Well, we know that it is quite a frequent cause of flight mishaps in general. And probably hypersonic and suborbital flight are not exception to this. I remind you of this accident that occurred about 50 years ago to a test pilot, Michael Adams. He was a US Air Force test pilot, and he had an accident, a fatal accident with the X-15. Well, there was a tape video that was recorded during that flight, and the committee who examined the events related to this accident well understood that it was completely unaware about the situation as to the orientation of the spacecraft. So this might play a role, since the sensory cues coming to our brain in that very high level situation, well, probably can more easily produce the usual situation at risk for spatial disorientation. Well, I will try to move very rapidly. Well, radiation, of course, the exposure to environmental radiation might be a problem. There are very many types of radiation, as you see, and as you know probably better than I do. And, well, yes, of course, they might be theoretically related to cancer growth. Nevertheless, we do not think that it should be a very risky situation. Why this? Because the duration of exposure is very short in this case. So, of course, it is, there is a relationship between the cancer growth and the level of exposure, and it is, of course, in its turn related to the duration of the exposure. So, from the practical point of view, in the case of suborbital flight that have been studied more deeply, well, the idea is that more or less more than 10 suborbital flights correspond to one X-ray investigation, standard chest X-ray investigation. That means that it should not be a so high dosage of radiation which is going to be absorbed by our body. One other aspect is the one related to acceleration. This is a theoretical model based upon the experience with the Virgin Galactic SS2. This study was performed on a ground-based situation on a computer, but the prediction is this level of exposure to G loss. We get around about 4 Gs in the vertical axis. What does it mean? That in individuals who are trained and who are used to deal with this sort of situation, it shouldn't be that big problem. It may be a different situation for passengers. And so what does it mean? It means that there is a possible solution in tilting the seats so that there will be a distribution of the G-forces in different axes, so that our cardiocirculatory system won't be affected that much from the change of G onset. And this possible solution mainly dedicated to passengers. Of course, crew members can utilize also anti-G suits as the re-entry anti-G suits that are commonly utilized by space crews during re-entry or military pilots when they were specifically dedicated tools utilized to counteract the effects of the high G levels. So what can we do? Well, these are just some examples for aerophysiological training. Yes, it can help us in preventing and not countermeasure, avoid some situations, especially as in this case, motion sickness. Well, this is a lower body negative pressure device. We reproduces in the laboratory the fluid shift that we can have under G changes. This is the hyperbaric chamber device we have in Pratica di Mare Air Force Base, and this is the gondola from a centrifuge that was utilized in Italy about 50 years ago. It's a known tool, but it is still in its current use in other laboratories for the training in high G environments. So, well, this can be quite a good solution to reduce the risk in the case of crew members, but this is not the only task. Why this? Because there are several situations that must be focused, and these are just some of them. What about certification? There is not an agreement, for instance, between European regulations and American ones, and this plays quite a significant role, since we are talking, in the case, for instance, of Virgin Galactic, of a company which is overseas. And what does it mean? That our rules do not necessarily fit with those of the Americans. We do not have that much experience to produce some evidence-based solutions. And of course we will have to develop different regulation according to the type of flight which is going to be performed by the individual. Are they part of the cabin crew members? Are they pilots? Are they passengers? Well, of course they have to meet different criteria to be certified. And so, just a memo to get an idea about what might be some areas of interest that involves also the engineers and the colleagues working on this application field. Well, of course, the environment is not the usual one for human beings, so we have to take this into account and categorize in a correct way which is the exact situation they are going to be exposed to. Second, we have been talking about passengers. Can everybody perform a flight like this? Or can they do it after some training? Cannot they do it all? Well, we don't know it yet, but we have to study about this. Especially when we take into account some factors affecting the cardiovascular system as accelerations, obviously. And one more aspect. When we talk about medical data on space crews, well, they are mainly part of the data from population which has been selected. So there are fit individuals without significant diseases, and of course we are talking about a quite selected sample. But we won't be able to do the same thing in the case of passengers. So we really have to pick up some tools to analyze the risk situation of each single individual and give them the access to this sort of flights. However, there are some possibilities. Training at first, but not only that. Of course, a scientific approach is certainly needed. Nevertheless, we have still to learn quite a lot. However, it was just a glance to some areas of potential interest for this sort of flights, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Well, the floor is open for any question you might have or curiosity about how you could fare in an hypersonic flight. Just put yourself in the shoes of those who are doing that. and try to imagine.
Well, I'm at your disposition even after the session if you want.
Okay, I see no reaction. That means that the day is done also for you. I would like, before we close this working